welcome to my show, Finding Joy in the Mundane. And today I have very special guests, my parents, and we're doing it at our house. So welcome. And I'm really excited about what we have to talk about today because I think it affects so many people and their perspective is so important to have. So welcome, Amy and Dave Rhodes.
Hi.
Thank you, Aya.
I know this is not very usual for you guys.
Mm-mm.
So just feel natural. This is just a conversation. And I just wanted to talk about how we got together, our adoption, and whatever advice and anything that you would have to say to future adoptees.
Mhm.
So my first question is, what was the adoption process like in the very, very beginning? And I will start with Mom because that was where it all started. And I think the story just develops, and I love how the story does. So, Mom, go ahead.
Well, it starts even in many ways before adoption because the second marriage, as you know, for both Dad and me, and we were older when we got married. I was 45, Dad was 46, and I had been married before, but I'd never had children. And Dad had been married before, and he has one son, but both of us had wanted large families.
Yeah.
So even before we were engaged, we started talking about, well, do we adopt or not? I didn't want to have a baby at 40 some years old. That's a little too old. So we started talking about adoption, and Dad was kind of hesitant. But I had also been adopted, so I had no real fear. But so I guess at some point in time we came to an agreement and said, okay, we will. And
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that part. Is that initially I told your mom, "Oh, I'll support you if you want to adopt. I'll support you."
yeah.
But-
And so I went to several meetings and things by myself.
Yeah.
To different adoption agencies.
Right. But of course, to be a parent, you just don't support the other
Yeah.
parent. You've got to be all in.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to get there. And the fact that your mom found a really good agency for us to work with was pretty much probably step two.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
Barker Foundation.
Yes, in Bethesda. And so we went there and we met with someone, I guess, and talked about their three options. They had infant adoption, they had international adoption, and had a brand new program called Project Wait No Longer. And we went to a meeting that sort of presented all three of these different
scenarios,
I guess, or options maybe. We left and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Project Wait No Longer. But I didn't think Dad would feel that way.
Yeah.
And so we were walking back to the car through Bethesda. And I'm like, so what did you think? Like really nervous. He goes, well, I think Project Wait No Longer, which is a foster child adoption program.
Yeah.
And Dad looked at me and said, oh my gosh, that's it. So we went forward with that.
Right. That was kind of the first time in my mind, I had congealed and said, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited about this.
Right.
So
This
why
is something
not
exciting.
the infant and other adoption options?
Infant was just two reasons, I think. One, we were too old. We would have been 50, and we didn't want to be, 72 by the time the child graduates from college.
Yeah.
And also, for infant adoption, it's highly competitive. You make a scrapbook, and then birth mothers will come in and they can look through the different scrapbooks and they can choose the adoptive parents. And I knew that it'd be devastating for me not to be chosen. It would just kill me. So that was that. I had looked into various international adoption scenarios, and they're very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really have the finances to put out like $30,000 or $40,000 to adopt, and you have to spend a lot of time in the country. And I was a teacher, so I could have done that in the summer, but Dad was working full time, and he wouldn't have been able to take off, say, a month.
Yeah. So it's unrealistic.
It was unrealistic
For us. It was and then finally, where's the greatest need? Obvious after we did a little bit of research and a couple of classes, how many children around in the foster care system, and a huge need right here in the United States.
Yeah.
And what happened after you came to that decision where you thought, okay, Project Wait No Longer is our program?
Right. Mm-hmm. So this is where God starts to work.
Okay.
Actually, he had been working.
He'd been working, for
beforehand,
a long time. Yeah.
Because your mom got interested in this particular Barker Foundation from a scrapbooking event that she went to, and just happenstance.
Yeah. I walked by a woman who was scrapbooking a really cute page And oh my gosh, it's a cute page. Oh, it's my daughter, my son, and I've adopted them. I said, oh my gosh, where from? The Barker Foundation. So I came home and I told Dad, I said, okay, that's it. We're done. We're doing this. We're making the decision now. We're doing it or we're not.
And it was really at the infancy of their work with the adoption or with the foster care system. But we went through several classes and also something called a home study. So we entered the program. We did all these classes, and then we did the home study, which really involves people coming to make sure your home's safe.
Yeah.
And your mom and I joked, the fire department came up, and the very first, we didn't even get out of the car. He goes, well, you failed already.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what?
You didn't even check the house. You already failed.
Yeah. And we had no idea what they were looking for.
Yeah.
Because we had a beautiful home. It was a great neighborhood, great school district, safe. And you were supposed to have numbers.
Numbers supposed to be a certain size.
Yeah, and we didn't.
And ours was smaller.
How ridiculous that is.
Well, it's not when you think about it, because the fire department needs to be able to see the address.
Yeah, but when you think about just trying to have a family, like this is the perfect home. I can never imagine having a more perfect home. And the fact that just the lettering on the letters.
Yep. But you have to go through a lot. You had to go through all these background checks, driving checks, sex offender checks.
How was it going through all of that?
Paperwork. There was a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, and a lot of fits and starts. Getting to the end of all that in May, when something very significant happened. Your mom was at home.
I was here. Dad was out of the country. It was Memorial Day weekend, and Grandma Rhodes was here. Uncle Chuck is here. Aunt Gail is here. Your cousin Dan is here. The house is full.
Yes.
The house is very full. I get this call from the Barker Foundation. Oh, we've got the perfect match for you. 3 girls. They're originally from Lebanon, and they need somewhere to stay tonight. And I can't get a hold of Dad, and I have a house full, and the home study isn't finished yet. So I said no. I said I can't do it. I can't say yes to having. We wanted 1, so I can't say yes to 3 without at least checking with my husband. But I tried.
Yeah, but all summer long we kind of wonder. I wonder what happened to those 3 girls.
Yeah.
Wonder what happened to those 3 girls.
In the meantime, it was discussed that we would go with a Lebanese family that already had our heritage and our language, and it was already in the process of being finalized, and that we would go see them. We've never met them. And I remember knowing this because I was a lot older. So at this point I was like 14, 15, and I can figure things out a lot faster. So I knew that they were looking at a different family. And then they had to tell me that family backed out because we did have the health issues, and I was a lot older, and I had my own mental health issues. So we were just a package that was really hard to adopt. And I knew that to begin with. So I wasn't really that shocked that they didn't want to adopt us. I was more shocked that they found another family, because they all told me at the same breath that no, they're not going to adopt us. But also, we did find you another family that is willing, and that you're going to meet them on December 13th during the foster care Christmas party. And that was it. That's all I knew, was the fact that they were willing to adopt us. And I remember being like, okay, and not to tell my sisters, because we didn't want to get them excited or anything. So I was like, goodness, the minute they meet us, what's going to happen? Because the minute you meet us, we are a lot together. We're a lot one person, but all 3 of us, we become too much almost. So knowing that ahead of time, I had this excitement and fear of meeting you. And I didn't even know what you looked like. I didn't know any of it. So all I knew is that you were willing. And honestly, maybe that's all I needed.
This is where God really came in.
Ooh.
Oh, so you're right. He was on Wednesday's Child. And Wednesday's Child is a program. It's a local foster children who are difficult to place. They feature them to get them more exposure. And so Barker Foundation sent me the link, and shockingly, your father was out of the country again. And so I have this link, and I'm clicking on the link, and it's not working. I am not the most technology proficient, but I can click on a link. So Dad gets home, And we're meeting with our counselor, our social worker the next day. And I say to Dad, I say, we've got to click on this link. We've got to look. You can't go into the meeting and say, oh, we haven't even looked at the video of this child that you think we should up. So Dad's like, oh, okay, I can help you. I can show you how to click on a link. I'm like, yeah, okay. He clicks on the link, but it's Wednesday night. It's Wednesday. That's very important. So the new Wednesday's child comes up. And do you know who was featured? 3 girls. Lebanon. The middle girl has one leg that's a little bit shorter than the other. She's going to need a lot of physical help. And we lost it.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, God is screaming at us. This is who you are supposed to be with for the rest of your life. You said no once. I'm giving you another chance. Don't say no again. And we didn't.
And we didn't.
No.
Weren't you ever scared even in that moment? Because it really is going from 1 to 3.
I think we were so clueless.
Yeah, we didn't know enough to be scared.
Yeah.
We should have been.
We should, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we didn't know enough.
Yeah.
And we were so excited, and we knew we wanted a family.
Yeah.
And again, it was pretty obvious that God wanted us to do this, so we knew we had His support as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would be that would help us through. Yeah. And we needed it.
So what was it like for you guys meeting us for the first time?
Then I was nervous. I was nervous that day. Like, what are they going to think of me? And I was trying to dress nice. Like, will they think, will I not look good enough? Will I not be pretty enough? Will I not have the right clothes? You're teenagers. Hello.
That's so funny because I thought the same thing. I was worried about the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And even though those things actually don't matter in any way, shape, or form, but those were the things that we worried about that
because
day.
You can control that.
You
can control that. It's those first impressions that are so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we learned several things, and first impressions. My first impressions is that I was so excited.
Yeah.
To call somebody mom and dad. I mean, right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Mom, Dad. And it took me a little while to figure out, she's talking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was very exciting. Tala, she was 12.
She was, yeah.
Pretty much the first thing she says is, I just want you to know, I know everything there is to know about boys. And so it's okay for me to have a boyfriend.
About that.
It's okay for me to have a boyfriend because I know, and it's okay for me to have a phone.
Yeah. Can I have a phone?
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. Can I have a phone and can I have a boyfriend? Because I know everything there's about boys.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally,
Sarah didn't say anything.
Sarah, she just basically laughed.
She was giggling.
Yeah.
Sarah was
always the quiet one.
Yeah.
Quiet, but laughed when she, basically laughed.
When she was nervous.
Laffy Taffy when
she was nervous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I remember is Aya dragging her sisters up to the microphone.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So embarrassing.
No, it was.
We were singing Silent Night, and I hogged the mic. It was so.
It was so sweet.
It was very sweet. We still have a picture today.
Yeah, it's in the scrapbook.
Yep, singing that song.
Yep.
So.
I just wanted to impress them. I guess I thought that was the way. But
yeah.
I couldn't believe it, honestly, the fact that both of you guys wanted to adopt us. Maybe that's why I called you Dad to begin with, because I was the first person to say Mom and Dad.
Oh, yes. Definitely. Yeah.
And I guess I was trying to see if it felt right.
Right.
If I could actually do it. Calling you Mom and Dad, it never felt awkward and never felt abnormal. It was something that just felt right to me. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what scared me from the very beginning. Yeah. So after our Christmas party, we started having visitations. Right. Mm-hmm. And then we had a trial where we stayed for a year.
And then you moved in. We went down to Hatteras.
Mm-hmm. And we had originally 2 rooms for the 3 girls.
Yeah.
I had her own room, and she was the oldest.
Yeah.
And then the 2 girls would share a room, just like they had done in foster care.
Yeah.
And we, it's another funny thing. It's as you start to learn to be a family. But their room, the 2 girls' room, was always a mess. Just a mess.
You couldn't see the floor.
Yeah. And each one said it was the other one's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we finally decided, okay, we had an office upstairs.
Yeah.
I had an office upstairs. I'm going to move that down into the basement, and we're going to give each girl their own room. And we quickly found out who was the messy one.
Yes.
It was our middle daughter.
Yeah.
In fact, Sarah, our youngest, is almost compulsive in
She's
neatness.
very neat.
Very, very neat.
Very neat.
I don't even know how she lived with Tala for that long.
I don't either. Oh my gosh, I don't either.
But on that first night that we spent here, it was even the first time we even like came to the house.
Right.
I remember that.
Right.
We had never even seen the house, and we knew that we were going to stay here.
Yeah.
So I was all ready. I didn't know what I was ready for, but I was ready to spend the night. Mm-hmm. And I remember having my own room, and that was the first time I've ever had my own room without Tala and Sarah. And even though I've been separated from them for so long,
you still had roommates.
I still had roommates. Yeah. So it was the first time I had a whole room to myself. And I remember like hearing you and watching you, because the door was kind of open, go into Tala and Sarah's room, and you guys tuck them in and give them a kiss goodnight. And that's when I started feeling that kind of lacking, I guess, to where I'm like, I never had that. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time I realized that I never had that, was because I saw them have it. Right. And at this point, I was older. I was 14, 15. Like, you don't expect to go kiss your 15-year-old goodnight. So I just went to bed, and I remember the next day I woke up and we were having breakfast, and I looked at my mom and I said, "Why didn't you kiss me goodnight?" And
because you're grown up.
She said, because we never thought that you'd want that. Yeah. And that's when I realized, wow, like, even though I was that age, those were still things that I craved and wanted.
And that was hard to try to figure out, because you were 14 when you moved in, and you were very mature. I mean, and you had been in a rough situation, and so you'd had to fend for yourself quite a bit. So you didn't seem to need that nurturing from the outside. Yeah. But inside you did. Yeah. So it was really hard to figure out, okay, I know she can do this. I know she's fine, but she really probably wants this, but does she really want it? So trying to figure that out. And like we talked about today, the debacle at the bus.
Yes.
So you were going to 10th grade, and Montgomery County, if you're new in the school system, they will take you to the school and give you a tour of the school, et cetera, before the school year starts. So, and then you go to the bus stop. So I walked with Aya down to the bus stop. The bus comes. I'm so excited for her. I'm so proud. I give her a big hug, and she's like, oh, because obviously you don't hug your 10th grader when they're getting on the bus. And I felt terrible, but come to find out today,
I finally tell her that honestly that meant so much to me, because even though back then I was embarrassed, because my mom was sitting there hugging me at 10th grade. Yeah. I've never had that. And someone was excited about me going to school and like continuing. So I was more grateful that I had that than I was embarrassed. Yeah. But even though back then all I did was make fun of her for doing it. So remember that.
Yeah. So 2009. So it's been 15 years. I finally find this out 15 years later.
15 years later. She even has a grandchild with me, and then still she hasn't known. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. But it really did, because I had never had that kind of memory. Yeah. And now I do. Mm-hmm. So I don't care how old I was when I got it. But I think that's what I want foster parents and adoptive parents to know, is that even though when we're older, we still want those memories that you would have gotten at 5 years old, 6 years old, and that you can still make them. Right. Even though it may not look the same as the rest of the world, I think it still means so much more. The same and so much more. Because finally I had that. Right.
Right. In fact, it surprised us, all three of you, as adults. We would talk about doing something, and one or the other of you would say, well, of course, that's tradition. It's our tradition. And we had, as parents, we just had decided we're going to do this or that in order, because we think it might be nice for the girls. Yeah. Not knowing that we're actually establishing that type of...
Right. And sometimes there would be things you'd complain about, but nope, we're going to do it, and then now...
And when I say complaint, I mean that we gave them the hardest time. Yeah. Like, this is the most inconvenient, like, high school reaction. And the fact that you weren't discouraged, I knew you were discouraged, at that point. but like you kept doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is amazing, is that despite us like saying that we don't want this, we don't like this, you knew better and you gave it to us anyway. And now that we're older, we look back and we're like, this is the greatest gift you could have ever given us. Because you didn't listen to our 15-year-old self saying, no, I don't like this. And even now I look back on our first or even second Christmas or Christmas Eve. It was my second Christmas with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember my first Christmas, because we had met December 13th.
Right.
It was very soon after that we had Christmas.
Yeah, because you guys came over, we gave you the bathrobes.
Yep.
We tried to give you things that you would need, but they were also fun.
They were sentimental.
Yeah, and things that you never had before. You know? So it would have been the next Christmas.
It was the next Christmas when we had already lived here and settled in.
Right.
And that day, it was Christmas Eve, and I had went and spent the night with one of my friends, and then I had come back, and it was time to go get dressed and go to see
my parents,
your parents, our grandfather, at the home he was staying in. And I remember just rushing in the house and feeling all the feelings that I was feeling, because I was experiencing my own drama being in high school and all the things that went with it. I remember them saying, it's time now to get ready to go see him. And something in me just couldn't do it. It really did just snap. Like I just couldn't do what I needed to do. And my dad comes in and he's trying to comfort me. But in that moment, because I was so traumatized, his comfort felt like an attack. Because anytime if I become too traumatized in my body, it feels too unsafe. So any touch feels like it's being an attack. So he did. He tried to hug me, and I ended up slapping him and attacking him back. And then after that, I ended up leaving and staying at my friend's house that night. And my dad and my adopted brother came that night to see me and to talk to me after, to try to bring me home. And I didn't come home because I just needed that time. And I remember the next day waking up and seeing my friend open her gifts with her family. And I realized that I have, for the first time in my life, that family. And I chose not to be with them over something that now, after having a good night's sleep, seems so small. But the guilt of that honestly made it even worse, because when I did come home, I came home the next day, and thankfully, I would say my parents weren't home, because I don't think I could have handled being with you guys at that point. So I go straight to my room, and all I see were these gifts on my bed filled with gifts, and gifts that meant that they knew me, like Cocoa Puffs. And I didn't even know that they knew I liked Cocoa Puffs. And as small as that is, it meant everything to me, because it showed me the minute I walked in that these people knew me and cared about me and cared about what I liked. And here I am hurting them. I didn't know how to live with myself then. And that was the night that I decided that I no longer wanted to live. It really was. But then having that idea of you guys coming and seeing me no longer being there, and Tala and Sarah, that broke me enough to where I wanted to keep going. And I did. And now I am more than grateful for all of it. But for that memory, because I realized that even when you're trying your best to love someone and to show them your love and to just do everything you can for them, how with trauma, it's still clouded and distorted, and it could distort it so much to where it could cause someone to have such a bad reaction. And that's the trouble, and that's the hardship with foster care and adoption, is that these new memories that you're making with them, they're also mixed with the trauma. So you're not making these just brand new memories. You're making these mixed memories and you're trying to sort them out. Mm-hmm. And if you don't give them the time to be able to sort them out fully, then a lot of people just decide that it's no longer worth it, mm-hmm. or it's no longer healthy for us to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. And breaking that down took me to, I was 26. Yeah. And it didn't just come with, oh, I turned 26 and then I tore it down. Yeah. It meant that from the day you adopted me till the day I turned, I was trying to break that barrier, trying to believe that you could love a daughter that you didn't give birth to.
That, yeah, you're right. You would mention that over and over and over. You can't be my mom because you didn't give birth to me. You can't be Sarah's mom. You can't be Tala's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something a lot of adopted kids struggle with, mm-hmm. and adopted moms, because they would think, okay, because I didn't give birth to them, they won't be mine.
Mm-hmm. I think when you adopt a child, it is so intentional and you have to work so hard, meaning you have to find the right agency. You have to go through the homestead. You have to do all this sort of stuff. And so I think in many ways you are so committed. Mm. Because you've made the decision not only to have a child, but to have a child in a very difficult process.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more like infertility struggles.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do think that, so I can't speak for all adoptive mothers, but I do think that when you adopt, you do it with such intention and such purpose and such diligence that you go into it just loving this child, whomever they are. So that's just my perspective. So yeah, I loved you. We didn't always get along, but I always loved you.
When you say we didn't always get along, that's such an understatement, Mom. But like even hearing you say that, I was loved before I even knew it. Mm-hmm. And
that's the key right there. You were loved before you knew it. You were loved before December 13th. You were loved. You were always loved.
Even though it took me a decade, literally a decade, mm-hmm. for me to finally believe it and to feel it and to allow that to just be a part of my life and to just saturate every part of me and, like build my life off of that. Because mm-hmm. when you finally realize your parents love you and you have them like forever,
right?
Like, then you feel this kind of security.
Yeah.
I'm taken care of. That is a security that I don't think a lot of people, especially foster kids, have.
No, I don't think so either.
But that is what has helped me become the person that I am today. Oh, because without that kind of security mm-hmm. and love, I would have been so desperate. Right. And that kind of desperation makes mm-hmm. people just act in ways they don't necessarily mm-hmm. recognize. Mm-hmm. But I had that. And even though I didn't fully believe it back then, I at least had that to be able to go back and fight my doubts with. Right. Be like, well, they've stuck with me this far. And you too, Dad.
Well, thank you.
Because you have gotten me through everything. Yeah. From applying to college to my first essays to you've read everything I've ever done and have gone through all my insecurities. Even when I published my first book, you read it. You were the first to read it and believe in it.
I'm your biggest fan.
You're my biggest fan. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to have them on here again. Don't you worry. Talking about different aspects of foster care, adoption, and just living life as a Christian, as a family, and how you develop that faith. Because when we came to them, we had no faith. And that's something I'm actually really excited for them to share with you, is how they developed that faith in me and my sisters. It won't be today because we all need to go to bed. I love you guys.
We love you. Love you too.
We love you, darling.
Thank you for doing this.